Okay, yeah. The question is, there are a lot of, in spite of all the coverage, there's a lot of dead spots, especially when you get into some industrial locations that may be hardened against radio frequency. So the question is, are there technologies or solutions on the horizon that will enable wireless coverage and internet coverage to penetrate into those kind of areas? So I guess that would be more a question for AT&T and Cisco. Are there things that you can do? What do you do for those kind of situations?
I'll start. It's the coverage gap question. Coming from a technical person, the physical nature, obviously, of a wireless signal and the effects of propagation by a building or a mountain, there's not a lot we can do about that. I mean, you can put in cell towers, that's one option, but from what else can we do? And so I liked your idea, actually, and it doesn't seem all that far off. It's from my perspective, I think any idea is a good idea. The way we do that today is if we do, working with customers who have problematic coverage areas, whether it's in a basement or mountains, there are a number of things we can do to augment the gap. Sometimes it's a matter of a bidirectional amplifier inside of a building. Sometimes it's a matter of putting a picocell on the facility to effectively provide the customer with their own cell tower, using the carrier frequencies and then using your enterprise backhaul for your voice and data traffic. In certain situations, just as well, we can use some of the near-field communication technologies. It really depends on the use case. Is it for voice or is it purely for data? There are other kinds of near or local field communications kinds of technologies, and I'm sure you're all aware of some of them, that we can use, and we can augment that through wireless gateways. Ultimately, with the help working with Cisco and some of our other platform partners to create a local area wireless network, whether that's wireless LAN or Zigbee or wireless HART, whatever that is, and then to backhaul that with LTE or 3G or 4G. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. I think that it really, in most cases, that's where we kind of step in to try to analyze the feasible options and then try to move forward with the most practical option, depending upon the requirements. But there's lots of things we can do to augment those gaps. And the fact of the matter is sometimes there isn't. And that's just the nature. There are some locations where it can't be done, unfortunately. And that's just honesty in terms of technical feasibility. So,
Maciej, have you been filling some gaps in coverage, and can you talk about how you do that?
Yes, and I think I agree that there are lots of different tools that we could use. We've actually been quite involved over the last couple of years working with AT&T as well as some of our other partners and customers with technology called SP Wi-Fi, which basically allows to fill the gaps with the Wi-Fi capabilities. And most of our customers are actually deploying this quite successfully. So in terms of the coverage gaps, I agree we have tools. Also on the client side, so you've mentioned these devices. Well, the good news is that we'll have more options coming soon. When you think about the car that you're driving, in 3 years, most of these cars will actually have IP connectivity, right? And we can get into the use case. We've been working a lot with the car industry, both from the truck perspective as well as passenger perspective, to offer IP connectivity, and some of the use cases are preventive maintenance or user distraction, autonomous vehicles, and so forth. But my point basically is, in addition to coverage, there will be also lots of devices that you can use to access the data, cell phone being one of them.
Okay, Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, Harry, thanks. Joe Kahn from Rockwell Automation. Another barrier, less technical but more cultural in the industrial world, the end user, as we call them, or the manufacturer, IT organization often has restrictions or completely wants to prevent that machine builder from having access to his machine, his fleet of machines within the four walls of that factory. It's a different issue. I don't know if there's standards, if there's culture, if there's whatever, but I'd be interested from any of the panelists, your views of how we can facilitate that OEM access, but in a controlled manner.
So I can start, and Joe, thank you for the question. And obviously, we're working very closely. We have a strong alliance between Rockwell and Cisco for many years, and the alliance is and the relationship is based very much based on the principles of standard and modified Ethernet and standard-based infrastructure, as well as the belief that the IT and OT worlds are converging. I think this is actually a great question because in many ways we do have a cultural shift going on. And traditionally, when you think about control engineer, he or she would have their domain, and it would be a kind of a self-sustained and self-contained. And right now, when we're talking about technologies, when there is move towards mobility, for example, when you'll be able to walk with your iPads and control the same devices that you have to go to HMI, sitting physically in the given location. And there are opportunities for applications to traverse across these domains. So from our perspective, and we're actually starting to work on these capabilities, is a lot of tools in education. On the IT side, a lot of work that we've done was around certifications, around classes, how the networks work, how the networks integrate with the applications. We're working and actually partnering again with Joe and with Rockwell on the same kind of tools and certifications or capabilities that we can now make available and tailor for the needs of the control engineers and the plant managers and so forth. There's also, going back to the question of technologies, looking at security architectures, looking at the networking and data architectures that would allow the plant operators and plant managers to deploy the best-in-class capabilities. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. When we talk about a lot of security issues, for example, other industries have dealt with these issues for many, many years, and many of these problems have been solved. We could apply the same knowledge and the same best practices to the industrial world as well.
I'd like to add to that. I really like your question. It's a good question, and it's something that I have firsthand experience with that question coming from some of the manufacturers that I work with, and it can be sliced up into a number of different ways. I know Cisco and Rockwell have a good working relationship with the Ethernet to the factory, providing access to the Rockwell tools in the factory, and we've been talking about the concept of wireless to a factory with the advent of LTE and the use of 700 megahertz. It's much more practical and feasible today than it ever was. And so that's real. And to the point that was made, the landscape is shifting, and it's more about a mentality now of kind of realizing that, hey, it's a different world now, in access methods to, understandably these customers have security concerns. They don't want anyone touching their assets. But it's a shifting world. And as manufacturers want to sell their products into these end customers and they want to offer these enhanced service plans, they are all looking to have this wireless, seamless access. And so I'm working with one manufacturer who's flat out saying, look, this is part of our new product line. This entire wireless service platform, this is part of the package. That's how it is. You want to work with us, this is how we do it now. And without sounding a little harsh, but that's the mentality that some of the manufacturers I'm working with, that's the path they're going down, because they have to. There's a lot of that old school mindset, whether old school is the right term or not, whatever the reasons are, and there are good reasons, but it's changing, and it's inevitable. This wireless access and this Internet of Things, this access to everything, it's here, and sooner or later, that there's going to be a wider acceptance. So I think we're in that phase right now where some of these manufacturing companies are still struggling with this concept. And it's going to be a process to ultimately get to it. 5 years from now, when we're sitting here, it's going to be a completely different story, different world. So,
I would just add that it's been the last 2 days I've been here. It's been fascinating. This issue has come up in every panel, almost every panel, And from a little different perspective, the consumer or the workforce is driving a lot of this too. And the bring your own device, right? BYOD. It's being talked about here. It's being talked about state and local government, and it's across the board. This cultural shift in how you handle the millennials coming into the workforce, as well as the protecting the critical assets and security issues that come along with that.
Okay, well, I hope things are considerably different in 5 years, but we'll convene sooner than that. Are there other questions from the floor? Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to ask for one final question and make the answers very brief, if you don't mind, guys. To kind of conclude the session, I would ask if you see it maybe a tall pole in terms of promise and risk, and low pole. So do you see a particular tall pole in terms of promise from your perspective and a particular hazard or risk for the growth of this area?
I'll go. From my perspective, from an association SDO perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunity to bringing the telecom experience, SDO experience into the automation space. And so lots of great opportunity, lots of great synergies amongst the industries. I guess the challenge would be that if we don't continue to have this collaborative conversation and share best practices and experiences, we're going to end up spending more money and wasting time. So standards are important for that reason, because harmonizing is important.
For everyone sitting through these last 2 days, I think the tall pole is obvious, and that's lower costs through operational efficiencies. That comes for better, more granular data and better business intelligence. Along with that, from our perspective, especially in the manufacturing service industry, it's opportunities for enhanced revenue streams. And what we're offering here through this enhanced information is for companies to repackage themselves, as the one I mentioned, repackage themselves to their customers, and to, there's opportunities here to turn that into new revenue streams. The risk, the shortfall here is, when we talk about, this issue of connectivity on a customer premises, I mean, there's risk there, because when you have that level of connectivity, there's an expectation for service level. And that's something that manufacturers are going to have to deal with, especially when they go out and they start putting SIM cards and gateways on every single customer location. Now they're on the hook. There's an expectation for enhanced service levels, and that's the risk that the manufacturers are going to have. Those are expectations that are going to have to be very clearly defined by the product manufacturers.
So I agree with the tall pole. As far as the risk or the areas we need to look at and be cautious about is, one is open standards. We really need to focus on open standards, and second one is around architectures. This is not a point product solution to the problems we talked about. We need to look at the architectural solutions. The third one is more of a cultural, is the industry actually working together and across the whole stack, from the applications to the devices to the network and so forth. So if we focus on these three things, we'll be sitting happy here 5 years from now.